Welcome to Malifaux University. 309. Activation Phase, Actions. If abilities are on the front of a model stat card, what is on the back? 99% of what's on the back of the card is the model's actions. These are the special things your model can do during its activation. Figuring out what you want to do from this list is probably what you'll spend most of your time doing during the game, so we're going to give lots of examples throughout this video. If you don't recall from video 102, bonus actions are the ones with the little lightning bolt next to their names. A model can take only one bonus action during its activation, even if it has more than one bonus action on its card. During their activations, Henchman, Enforcer, and Minion models can take 2 actions plus a bonus action. Henchmen serving as crew leaders get to take 3 actions and a bonus action. Master models get 3 actions plus a bonus action even if they're not serving as the crew leader, which can be a little extra something if you hire an additional master model into your crew. Keep in mind that actions can break the normal rules. If something weird is printed on the card, it supersedes whatever is printed in the rulebook or elsewhere on the card. Check out Seamus's actions. His 50 caliber flintlock projectile attack says it can be used only once per activation. Let's say he fires the flintlock at Dashiell Barker for his first action. For his second, he uses his secret passage tactical action. We'll discuss target numbers in a minute, but let's say he flips an 8 to make it happen and jumps from here to there, right next to a guard patrol who doesn't know what's about to hit him. Seamus uses his bag of tools on the poor redcoat, flipping cards, doing 5 damage, and killing the guy. The guild player drops a corpse marker in base contact and removes the guard patrol model. Seamus has just his bonus action left before he ends his activation. A cause for celebration lets Seamus take one more regular action. Since he already fired his 50 caliber flintlock, which can be used only once per activation, Seamus would have to choose Bag of Tools, Terrorize, Secret Passage, or one of the general actions most any model can take, and that we'll also discuss later. However, he removes the corpse marker that is within 2 inches and on the enemy table half, and that lets him ignore the italics costs of the action he takes. He gets to fire his flintlock one more time, much to Dashiell's displeasure. Other rule-breaking text might say the attack ignores cover or friendly fire, or might even allow a model to take a projectile attack action while engaged. If it's on the card, you just go with it. Now, let's look at the anatomy of an action. The name of the action is to the left in bold type. You may find that some models have actions with the same name. This usually means the actions will be similar, but does not guarantee that they are identical. Tuco Ortega and this Silurid both have sharp claws, which have the same range, stat, and damage variable profile. Their triggers are completely different, though. This Poison Gaiman also has sharp claws with the same range and damage variable profile, but its stat has an embedded crow that guarantees it gets the Infect trigger. These little differences are why you should always be familiar with your cards, but not rely on memory. RTFC, remember? RG means range, which is measured in inches and shows how far away you can use this action on a target. This stat will also show what kind of action it is: melee attack, projectile attack, pulse or aura, or the unnamed 5th type of action, which has no symbol. It may be helpful to think of these actions as spells. When measuring distance, as long as any part of the target's base is within range, even a tiny bit, the target is in range. Check out video 107 for how to handle it when the measurement is so close that the target may or may not be in range. The type of action is important in that the longest range of any of your melee attacks is the length of your engagement range. Engagement is covered in video 205, but a quick summary is that when you're engaged by another model, you cannot take projectile attack actions, but you can take the unnamed spell action. When you're engaged, you also cannot take the interact or charge general actions. You may take the walk action as long as you don't leave the enemy model's engagement range. Back to our earlier example with Seamus. Instead of shooting first, let's say he hopped over to the guard patrol by using his secret passage. The guard patrol's sword has a 1-inch range, and Seamus is within that, so he's engaged by the guard patrol. Because he's engaged, Seamus cannot fire his .50 caliber flintlock, so he can use either his bag of tools melee attack or his terrorize attack action, which could wind up pushing the guard patrol out of engagement range and letting Seamus use his flintlock for his third action. Since Secret Passage and A Cause for Celebration are not projectile attacks, Seamus could also use either of those while engaged. It's just projectile attacks that are ruled out. If the action requires a duel, it will have a stat. This number is added to the card you flip when taking the action. It may also include a suit, which means that you get to add that suit to the flipped card as well, which usually gives you a choice of triggers, as we see with the Poison Gaemon. If the stat also has a positive modifier, like Fuhatsu's Gatling gun, the action and its trigger then automatically have a positive modifier. This means he gets to flip 2 cards when he makes this attack and gets to pick either of them he wants. More details about duels and using cards is in video 104. RST is the resistance stat. This tells you what stat your opponent will use when resisting the attack. Most use defense, like Seamus's bag of tools or flintlock, or willpower, like his terrorize attack. But some use movement, like Benny Walcomb's Swarm Them bonus action, and a few even use size, like Captain Zip's Up We Go attack. Let's take a quick look at that. Captain Zip is tangling with the 10 Thunders and is currently engaged by a Dawn Serpent and a Samurai. He doesn't like this tag team action, so he declares he's using Up We Go. The Dawn Serpent has flight, so is not a viable target. He targets the Samurai. His stat is 3, and he flips a 10 of rams for a total of 13. The Samurai defends with his size, which is 2. He flips a 5 for a total of 7. He decides it's not worth the cheat and loses the duel. Zip strategically places the Samurai mostly behind the Dawn Serpent to keep the Samurai from charging him, and flips a single card for damage due to the difference between their duel totals. He flips a 12 for severe damage, doing 4 points of damage. The Samurai's armor reduces that by 2, and he loses just 2 health. If the attack has a T in, this is a target number. This means the attacker must hit this number and possibly a suit in order for his attack to succeed. Look at Amina Naidu's Obey attack. It has a stat of 7. The target resists with willpower, but Amina still has to hit the target number of 14 of masks. Since it comes with a 7, she needs to flip a 7 or better, but if it's not a 7 of masks, the attack will fail. Since she's a henchman, she could spend a soulstone to put a mask on the flip, as described in video 201. If the defender loses the duel when flipping against the attack, but the attacker doesn't hit this target number, the attack fails anyway. It might make more sense for the defender to not have to flip if the attacker doesn't get the target number, but it really comes down to who has the opportunity to cheat fate first. Here we have Amina facing off against a Beckoner. They are 8 inches apart, and to use her Obey attack on the Beckoner, Amina flips a 10 of crows for a total of 17 of crows. The Beckoner resists with her willpower of 5 and flips a 10 for a total of 15. Since the Beckoner is technically losing the duel with a lower total, she has the option to cheat fate first. If she does not, then Amina, who did not get the suit for her target number, may cheat in a mask from her control hand to get the suit. That needs to still mathematically beat the Beckoner's 15, so as long as she cheats in an 8 or higher, she'll win the duel since the attacker wins ties. In another version of this same duel, let's say the Beckoner flips a 13 for a total of 18. Amina is now losing the duel and has the chance to cheat fate first. If she does not, the duel is over and the Beckoner is safe. If Amina chooses to cheat, she has to beat or tie the Beckoner's 18 and get the mask in her target number. If she cheats in an 11 of masks, she'll tie the Beckoner at 18. The Beckoner then has the chance to cheat fate, but since she already flipped a 13, only the red joker will raise her total any higher. If Amina were to have cheated in a 13 of masks, giving her a total of 20, nothing the Beckoner could do would beat it. Some game effects refer to attack actions. The easiest way to see if one of your actions is an attack action is to see if it's listed in the section marked Attack Actions. Kind of a no-brainer. But if you want to think about it harder, any action that has a resist stat counts as an attack action. If the action does not have a resist stat, it's a tactical action and will be listed under the tactical actions on the card. Actions can generate triggers, which are covered extensively in video 210. A brief recap of that video is triggers are additional outcomes of duels tied to the suit of the card in the conflict, which can be modified by spending a soul stone or through other suits embedded in the stat. Usually, it's just from flipping or cheating a card, though. Action triggers are affected by any modifiers that affected the original duel, such as positive or negative modifiers, but these modifiers do not affect the damage flip if there is one, because the damage flip is not really part of the duel. If the trigger generates another action, that new action cannot declare triggers of any kind. Take a look at Agent 46. For his first action, he attacks Cassandra Felton with his twirling blades. It comes with a stat 6, and he flips a 10 of masks, giving him 16. She resists with her defensive 6, but flips a 4 for a total of 10. Neither of them cheats fate, and Agent 46 declares the Pouncing Strike trigger. Cassandra reminds Agent 46 that he's not done with her yet, so he flips a single card for damage, flipping a 9 and doing 4 damage to Cassandra. Now he uses the Pouncing Strike trigger from the mask he flipped in the duel and places himself into base contact with Carlos Vasquez and uses Twirling Blades on Carlos. When Agent 46 does the attack this time, though, it doesn't matter what suit he flips because this attack will not give him a trigger at all. If he succeeds in attacking Carlos, Agent 46 gets to flip for damage, but that's it. The upside is that triggered actions don't count against your action limit. In this case, since Agent 46 used his first action to attack Cassandra, and this attack on Carlos was free, Agent 46 still has one more action to take and his bonus action. If the trigger generates a bonus action, the model can do it, even if the model has already done a bonus action. We can see this in the mask trigger on Charles Hoffman's Emergency Power Transfer bonus action. For full details and more examples of rules about triggers, go back to video 210. General actions are those actions that almost any model can take and are never printed on any model's card. Engagement limits the options available to a model, so it may be in your interest to disengage from a model that has you tied up. The disengage action lets you push away from a model engaging you, but they get to make a fake attack to try to stop you. This is covered in detail in video 205. Some models, like the Botanist, have the Wicked ability that lets them make a real attack when you disengage from them. So, in addition to reading your own cards, it's a good idea to understand what is on your opponent's cards as well. When a model takes the Interact action, it gets to do one of 3 things. Drop a scheme marker into base contact with the model, but not within 4 inches of another friendly scheme marker. You can put a friendly scheme marker next to an enemy scheme marker, but there must be at least 4 inches distance between friendly scheme markers, even if there's no line of sight. The second option is to remove all scheme markers in base contact with the model. You don't get to pick and choose which scheme markers, and it doesn't apply to just enemy scheme markers. If you're in base contact with more than one scheme marker when you choose this option, you remove all of them. The third option is related to the schemes and strategy you're playing. Often, those games will have special strategy markers or special effects caused by the Interact action. Either way, a model cannot interact while it is engaged. It also cannot interact if it took the Disengage action during this activation. This is why it can be a real game changer to have models with actions or other abilities that let them drop scheme markers without having to take the Interact action. Taggart Queeg's Sabotage Their Plans and Kitty Dumont's Lingering Contamination bonus actions are examples of these. It is the interact action that is restricted by engagement and disengaging, so these models can still take these actions regardless of engagement. Concentrate is an action a model may take only once during an activation that gives it the focused +1 condition. This can be really handy if your model is out of pocket and has nothing else to do, but remember that focused +2 is the max. Assist lets your model help another friendly model within 2 inches and line of sight. If the other model has burning, distracted, or injured, you flip the top card of your fate deck and lower the condition by 1, 2, or 3. Like any other flip, you can cheat it or use soulstones to put a positive modifier on it. If Dashiell Barker had burning +3 thanks to the obsidian statue, a nearby guard patrol, or even the guard hound, could spend one of their actions to flip a card. Say the hound flips a 6. That's moderate, so would reduce Dashiell's burning condition by 2, leaving him with burning +1. A model cannot take the assist action to benefit himself, so either the guard hound would have to use its second action to assist again, or it would be up to the guard patrol to assist Dashiell during the patrol's activation. The walk action is simply moving up to the maximum distance of your movement stat in inches. Charging is a special 2-part action that lets you push up to your movement stat and then make a melee attack if you want to, all in one action. You cannot do this if you're currently engaged, and you can do it only once per activation. Measuring distance, moving, and charging are explained in detail in videos 107 and 108. The last general action most models can take is actually a tactical action that removes a piece of terrain that has the Destructible trait. This includes most fences, crates, and other light terrain that you and your opponent would identify as destructible when you're first setting up the table. The model who takes this unnamed action must be within 1 inch of the terrain to remove, and simply does it. The rulebook does not explicitly state your model must have line of sight to the terrain to take this action, but the April 2021 FAQ clarifies in Section 2, Question 10, that the range of an action includes line of sight, so the model must have line of sight to the terrain and be within 1 inch of it in order to use this action to remove it. When you take an action, there are 6 steps to follow. First, you declare the action. This means you verbally announce to your opponent which model is taking which action. There should never be a time when you start flipping cards and your opponent has to ask for what, even in a simple duel. Friendly games are well-narrated games. The second step is to pay the costs. Some actions have italics rules in their descriptions, which may include an actual cost to pay, like Bert Jebsen's Reckless bonus action. He suffers 1 damage in order to gain the fast condition. Another cost is on Captain Zip's Drop the Pianos action, which has the option to discard 1 or 2 cards from his hand or pass tokens. The action itself creates 1 piano marker that counts as terrain, but he gets to add 1 piano marker for each card or pass token he discarded when paying the costs of the action. Other costs may include a targeting restriction, like Bill Algren's Stoic Nod, which can be used only on another friendly model, or his Heroic Intervention, which can target only an enemy model. If you can't pay any part of the action's cost when you declare the action, it automatically fails. So, for Bill Algren, if there is no other friendly model within 6 inches when he declares Stoic Nod, the action would fail with no viable target. If Bert Jebsen were already down to 1 health, he could not pay the cost of Reckless, since no model is allowed to reduce its health to 0 in this way, and his bonus action would fail. If Howard Langston declared his Transfer Power bonus action, he could target only the Mecharachnid 2 inches away from him. If he didn't have a power token to discard, though, his action would just fail. Some costs are completely situational, like this Bayou Gator's Ambush action, which lets it move up to 3 inches if it's not engaged. When it declares this action, though, it has to discard a card if it's not currently in terrain with the concealing trait. If it is, then the ambush action is free. The third step flows naturally from the second. You declare your target. You may not target yourself with an attack action, plain and simple. If it requires a duel, it has to be against some external target. Some actions don't require a target, especially if they create a pulse, like the Illuminated's Scintillating Cloud, which drops a shockwave marker up to 8 inches away, or if they create terrain, like McTavish's Swamp Screen. Most attack actions do need a target, though, so that target must be within the range of the attack and within line of sight, unless some other game mechanic says otherwise. With that Illuminated's Scintillating Cloud attack, he could not drop that shockwave marker on the other side of this wall, because even though it's within 8 inches, he does not have line of sight. Some models have crazy line of sight rules, like Zoraida. Her Eyes in the Night ability lets her draw line of sight for non-melee attacks from friendly Swamp Fiend models within 12 inches of her, and from enemy models that she's given a voodoo upgrade to. So if she wanted to, she could use this Groot slang that's 11 inches away from her to draw line of sight to Sloth, who is 10 inches away from the Groot slang, for Hex or Obey, which each have a 12-inch range. If you have no legal target, because there's not one within range or line of sight, the attack just fails, even if you've already paid some other cost. This is why pre-measuring is allowed in Malifaux. There's nothing wrong with checking the distance between your model and possible targets before you declare an action. Just don't slow down the game for it. In a friendly game, you should be forgiving of your opponent if they declare an action and then discover there's no target for it, and let them just take it back and do something else. That's how you'd like to be treated in a friendly game, isn't it? In a tournament, however, it's mistakes like declaring an action with no legal target that make the difference between winning and losing a game, so don't expect your opponent to be so generous. It'd be nice if they were, but don't count on it. The fourth step is performing the duel if needed. Some actions, like Zoraida's Threads of Fate or the Beckoner's Pleasant Distraction, don't need a duel, so they just succeed as long as any costs or conditions are met. Using cards and performing duels is covered in video 104. The fifth step is to apply the results of the action. Usually, this means a damage flip, but it might mean giving a model a condition, or moving the targeted marker or model. If an action has multiple effects, they are resolved in the order they are printed on the card. If you cannot resolve a particular effect, it is just ignored, but that doesn't mean you skip anything else. Carry out the rest of the effects normally. Nellie Cochran's One More Question attack has multiple effects. Let's say she targets Kitty Dumont, who is 6 inches away and is also engaging Fiona Gage. She flips a 10 of crows to go with the 6 of tomes stat for a total of 16. Kitty Dumont resists with her willpower of 5 and flips a 3 for a total of 8. She doesn't cheat, and Nellie has the choice of the Headline Secrets Exposed trigger from the tome or the Convulsions trigger from the crow. She goes with the tome and declares Headline Secrets Exposed, which means that Kitty Dumont will take the interact action. Even though she declared the trigger after winning the duel, she needs to resolve the attack's effects before moving on to the trigger. First, Kitty gains the slow condition. If Fiona Gage weren't there, that would be the end of it, but since Kitty is engaging Fiona, we move on to the second effect of One More Question. With a difference of 8 in their duel totals, Nellie flips a single card for damage and flips a 9 for moderate damage. Kitty's Incorporeal ability reduces that by 1, and she suffers 2 damage. Then the trigger kicks in, and Kitty Dumont must take the interact action. Nellie is not controlling Kitty for the purposes of this action, so Kitty Dumont can make her own choice about what to do with this. She's not in a position to use interact to score a scheme or strategy, so that's not an option. She can either remove all scheme markers in base contact with herself, which right now is none, or she can drop a friendly scheme marker in base contact with herself. She chooses to remove the scheme markers that are in base contact with her, which is 0. Either way, since she's within 8 inches of Nellie Cochran, Nellie's Breaking News ability lets her draw a card and gain the Focused +1 condition. While you're figuring out the effects of the action or attack, watch for any effect that says when resolving, as it will usually take place during this step. Often, that affects the damage flip in some way, such as Gwyneth Maddox's Unimpressed Resistance trigger. Let's look at the previous example with her in place of Kitty Dumont. Nellie Cochran targets Gwyneth Maddox, who is 6 inches away and also engaging Fiona Gage. She flips a 10 of crows to go with the 6 of tomes stat for a total of 16. Gwyneth resists with her willpower of 6 and flips a 3 of crows for a total of 9. She doesn't cheat, and Nellie has the choice of the Headline Secrets Exposed trigger from the tome or the Convulsions trigger from the crow. She goes with the tome and declares Headline Secrets Exposed. Even though she declared the trigger after winning the duel, she needs to resolve the attack's effects before moving on to the trigger. First, Gwyneth gains the slow condition. If Fiona Gage weren't there, that would be the end of it, but since Gwyneth is engaging Fiona, we move on to the second effect of one more question. With a difference of 8 in their duel totals, Nellie flips a single card for damage and flips a 9 for moderate damage. Now Gwyneth's Unimpressed trigger kicks in because she flipped a crow in her defense flip, and this says, when resolving. Since Nellie declared a trigger during her attack, the damage Gwyneth suffers is reduced by 2. Since the moderate damage on Nellie's attack is 3, Gwyneth suffers only 1 damage. The rest of the effects are resolved as before, with Gwyneth having to take the interact action and choosing for herself which way she wants that to go. Once the effects of the attack are all resolved and triggers are all resolved, step 6 is for any after succeeding effects or anything that says after resolving. You won't find after succeeding actually printed on any card because every effect is assumed to be after succeeding unless it says otherwise. That means you have to win the duel or otherwise successfully carry out your action to get these effects. If your action fails at any point, you don't get any other effects except for after resolving effects, because you don't have to win for it to be resolved. Let's say it's a different game, and Fiona Gage activates and swings her modified pickaxe at this dead doxy. Fiona has a stat of 6 and flips a 9 of rams for a total of 15. The dead doxy flips a 9 of masks and adds that to her defense stat of 5 for a total of 14. The dead doxy doesn't cheat fate, and Fiona wins the duel. The difference of 1 in their duel totals means Fiona has a negative modifier on her damage flip. The dead doxy is also hard to wound, which gives another negative modifier, but Fiona's modified pickaxe specifically ignores hard to wound. Fiona flips 2 cards, a 3 and a 9, and takes the 3 because of the negative modifier. That does 2 damage to the dead doxy. Now the dead doxy's regret resistance trigger kicks in because it says after resolving. Since Fiona used a melee attack action and the dead doxy suffered damage, Fiona's activation immediately ends. She doesn't get her second action or her bonus action. While all conditions are covered in depth in video 204, here is a brief summary of those conditions that affect actions before we close. Adversary gives a positive modifier to attack actions targeting the model with the condition, but only attack actions and only those that specifically target that model. Fast increases the number of actions the model can take by 1, but to a maximum of 3 actions. This means there's usually no benefit to giving a master model or your crew leader fast, except to counter the effects of slow, which lowers the number of actions the model can take by 1. Stunned models cannot declare triggers from actions or abilities, and their bonus actions count against their action limit. Distracted gives a negative modifier when you target an enemy model with any action, attack, tactical, or otherwise. Distracted is cancelled by Focused, which gives a positive modifier when performing an opposed duel, which may be when you perform an action or defend against an attack. If you haven't already, join the MU Jokers on Patreon to get early access to all new content and more. Remember, when you're just starting out, keep it simple and have fun.